I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as I pointed my trembling finger at her across the dimly lit courtroom. The air was thick with tension, every pair of eyes fixated on the chaos I was unleashing. "It was you," I rasped, voice raw with disbelief and fury. "You poisoned your own brother. How could you?" My words hung in the air, heavy and unforgiving, as I watched her face remain disturbingly calm. Her eyes, cold and unyielding, met mine with a chilling detachment that sent a shiver down my spine. She didn't flinch. Instead, she slowly lifted her chin, a faint smile curling at her lips, almost mocking. "You think you know everything," she whispered, her voice silky and deadly. "But this is only the beginning. I swear, I will make you pay for this betrayal." Her words cut through me sharper than any blade, and I saw her lips tighten into a dangerous vow that echoed in my mind long after she'd spoken. I remember the moment vividly, the cold sweat forming on my brow, the trembling of my hands as I clutched the microphone. I had no choice but to speak, to accuse, to shatter the silence that threatened to swallow me whole. "She's lied to everyone. She's poisoned him. I saw her near the vial. I saw her mix the poison." I watched her smile as he collapsed. "She's a murderer." My voice cracked under the weight of the truth, each word a desperate cry for justice, for redemption. Her eyes flickered, an almost imperceptible flicker of rage or amusement. I couldn't tell which. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze locking onto mine with predatory precision. "You're so sure of your facts," she said softly, almost lazily. "But facts can be manipulated, and I will make sure everyone believes that I am innocent." Her tone was venomous, each syllable dripping with menace. I saw her lips curl into a smile, malicious and triumphant, and my stomach clenched. The room seemed to spin as I stared at her. My mind raced, recalling every detail, the way she had acted innocent when questioned, the subtle tremor in her voice when she denied everything. But I knew the truth. I saw her eyes dilate slightly when she thought no one was looking, the quick glance towards the hidden compartment in her purse. I had been blinded for so long, but now, the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "I'm not finished," I rasped, voice hoarse. "You'll pay for this. I swear, I will see you behind bars, where you belong." Her smile widened, and she whispered back, "You think you can threaten me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. Vengeance will be mine, and I promise, I'll bury you alive, both in this prison and in your nightmares." Her words echoed in my mind, a brutal promise that haunted me even now, long after the verdict was read, long after she was led away. That moment marked the beginning of a descent I couldn't escape, a relentless nightmare of betrayal, suspicion, and dark promises. Every day since then has been a fight to keep my sanity, to unravel her lies and find the truth buried deep beneath her calculated calm. But deep down, I know she's already planning her revenge, waiting for the right moment to strike back with even more cruelty. I live in fear that this isn't over, that her vow of vengeance isn't just empty words, but a prophecy she will fulfill. And I'm left to wonder whether I will survive the storm she has unleashed, or if I will be buried alive in her darkness forever. I sat in that suffocating silence, the kind that grips your chest and refuses to let go. Every second stretched into an eternity as I watched her, Clara, her gaze fixed on me, eyes cold and unwavering. Her lips curved into a smile that felt more like a dagger than an expression of amusement, a calculated, chilling expression that sent shivers down my spine. It was as if she had already sealed her victory, her mind set on the dark vengeance she had sworn to enact. Her calmness was almost worse than fury. While I struggled to find my breath, to piece together the betrayal that had shattered my world, she sat there with a serenity that mocked me. That smile, so serene yet so deadly, stretched across her face as she leaned forward just slightly, her eyes gleaming with a wicked determination. It was like staring into the abyss, knowing that beneath that placid exterior lurked an unforgiving storm. "You think this is over," she whispered deliberately, her voice silky but laced with a venom that made my skin crawl. The words felt like a dagger stabbing into my gut, each syllable echoing her vow of retribution. You accuse me of poisoning my brother, but you have no idea what I am capable of. My vengeance is only just beginning, and mark my words, I will make sure you are buried alive, both in the darkness of this prison and in the depths of your nightmares. Her eyes flickered briefly to the corner of the room, where a faint shadow moved, perhaps a reminder of a lurking danger I refused to see. I clenched my fists, feeling the tremor that refused to subside, burning like a wildfire inside me. The weight of her words pressed down on me, suffocating, ominous. I knew, deep down, that I had crossed a line by daring to accuse her, and now she was wielding her wrath with terrifying precision. Her vow of vengeance echoed relentlessly in my mind, each repetition chipping away at my resolve. I could almost see her silhouette lurking in the dark, plotting, waiting, her smile a mask hiding the fury beneath. That promise, that terrifying pledge, was a noose tightening around my neck, constricting every hope I had left for peace. I wondered how she managed to keep her composure, to sit there with such icy calm while the storm brewed behind her eyes. Was this what she had been planning all along? Did she hold her rage in check, feeding on my naivety? I could feel the cold sweat on my brow, the prickling sensation of fear crawling up my spine. She was a predator, and I had been caught her trap. The silence stretched on, heavy and oppressive, broken only by her whispering words that seemed to drift like poison through the air. I couldn't tell if I was trembling from anger, fear, or a mixture of both. Her promise was a curse I knew I couldn't ignore. Not anymore. It was a prophecy of doom that I had inadvertently invoked, and now I had no idea how to escape her wrath. Her smile widened slightly, as if she was savoring the moment, the power she held over me, the control she wielded with terrifying ease. I felt my own resolve crumbling, replaced by a gnawing dread that this nightmare was far from over. She had sworn revenge, and I could see in her eyes that she meant every word. In that frozen moment, I saw the darkness she carried within her, the darkness I had once thought I could contain with love and trust. Now I realized she was capable of unleashing chaos that would swallow us whole. She was a tempest, and I was the fragile vessel caught in her path. I clenched my jaw, refusing to let her see the tremor that threatened to betray me. But as I looked into her eyes, I knew I was already lost. Her vow was a lock, and I was the key she had turned with malicious intent. The room seemed to shrink around us, shadows lengthening, mirroring the impending storm she promised to bring. And as the stillness persisted, I understood. Her vengeance wasn't just words. It was a promise, a dark vow etched into the fabric of our twisted fate. I felt the cold dread seep into my bones, knowing I had ignited a fire that might consume everything I loved. In that moment, I realized I was no longer just fighting her. I was fighting the darkness she had unleashed, a darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. I couldn't hold back any longer. The weight of my suspicion had been pressing down on me like a crushing vice, and I knew I had to confront her, face to face, no hiding. As I stepped into the sterile silence of the waiting room, my hands trembled, not from fear alone, but from an overwhelming mixture of anger and doubt that gnawed at my insides. I looked directly into Clara's eyes, demanding the truth I already feared I knew. "Clara," I started, my voice trembling but edged with a fierce resolve. "I know what you did. I see through your lies now. You manipulated Daniel, didn't you? You convinced him to do it, that you had nothing to do with the poisoning, but I can see it in your face. You hid your involvement, your part in it, and I won't be fooled anymore." My words felt sharp, cutting through the thick, oppressive silence that seemed to stretch endlessly around us. She sat perfectly still, her expression unchanging, as if carved from ice. Her lips curled into a cold, calculated smile, an expression that sent a shiver down my spine. There was no remorse, no guilt, just a calm, threatening composure that made my blood boil. "You're jumping to conclusions," she whispered softly, almost mockingly, her voice as smooth as silk but laced with venom. You think I'm responsible for Daniel's suffering? You really believe I'd poison him? She leaned forward slightly, as if to draw me into her trap. You must be desperate, or maybe just naive. I clenched my fists, feeling the tremor in my hands that I fought to suppress. Don't play innocent with me, I snapped. I've seen the signs, the traces, the evidence. I know you've been hiding something. You've always been good at manipulation, twisting the truth, hiding your darker side behind that perfect smile. Daniel's illness, the suspicious traces, you've had your hand in all of it. You lied to me, to everyone. You've been orchestrating this from shadows. Her eyes flickered with a cold, calculating light. A faint, sardonic smile lingered on her face, as if she was amused by my accusations, by my inability to see her true nature. You're accusing me without proof, she murmured, her voice like a deadly whisper. And now you want to believe I'd kill my own brother? That's a dangerous game you're playing. You think this is about trust? About love? No, this is about survival, about me protecting what's mine. And if you think I'll sit here and let you drag me down with your accusations, you're dead wrong. I felt rage surge inside me, hot and uncontrollable, but I fought to keep my voice steady. I don't believe in coincidences anymore, I said through gritted teeth. Daniel's condition worsened after he was near you. You lied to me, kept secrets. I see the pattern. You're hiding something, and I swear, Clara, I will uncover it. I don't care what it takes. If you think you're going to get away with this, think again. You promised revenge, and I know you're capable of more than just words. You've been planning something, haven't you? You're involved. You're the one manipulating everything behind the scenes, covering your tracks. She tilted her head slightly, studied me with an expression that was almost amused, then her smile grew colder. You're wrong, she said softly, almost taunting. I've done nothing but love Daniel. I would never hurt him. But if you want to keep accusing me, if you want to drown in your suspicions, go ahead. Just know that you're treading dangerous waters. I have my reasons, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family, even if that means silencing a few doubts along the way. I stared at her, the fire of my fury burning brighter with every word. I felt the cracks in my certainty widening, doubt gnawing at the edges of my mind. But I refused to back down, refused to let her manipulate me into silence. Deep down, I knew the truth was tangled in shadows, but I also knew I couldn't ignore the dark truth glaring at me from her eyes. I saw the threat in her words, the warning that she wouldn't hesitate to destroy me if I pushed any further. And as I stood there, trembling with raw emotion and desperate resolve, I realized that I was no longer just fighting her. It was a fight against the darkness she wielded, a darkness that threatened to consume everything I held dear. I clenched my jaw, steeling myself for whatever was to come, knowing that this confrontation was only the beginning of a battle I might not survive. In the dead silence of the room, I moved like a shadow myself, every step cautious yet driven by a gnawing sense of dread. The darkness was thick, almost tangible, pressing against my skin as I crept toward the bed. I had to see for myself. My trembling hand reached beneath her pillow, fingers trembling as I fumbled blindly, desperate to find something, anything, that could explain the chaos that had unraveled my world. And then I found it. A small, dark glass bottle, slightly dusty, with a faded label I couldn't quite read in the dim light. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drummer pounding out a chaotic rhythm of suspicion and fear. Why was this hidden here? Was she planning to do something even more terrible? Or was this a trap, an elaborate lie to throw me off? My mind spiraled, torn between the urge to confront her and the instinct to run, to escape from the darkness she represented. I stared at the bottle, my eyes darting to her peaceful sleeping form. Her chest rose and fell in steady, untroubled breaths, her face unmarked by guilt or remorse. Yet, as I watched, I felt the walls of my certainty closing in, a suffocating weight settling over me. Could she really be capable of murder? Or was I just losing my mind in this twisted game of betrayal? The image of her cold smile haunted me, and I clenched my fists, fighting back the surge of panic that threatened to drown me. What if this wasn't just about her brother? What if she was capable of ending my life as easily? The thought sent a shiver through my spine. I had always believed in her innocence, in the love we shared, but now I saw only shadows, secrets buried beneath her serenity. I knew I had to act fast, to decide whether to expose her or to turn away, drowning in the dark uncertainty that threatened to swallow me whole. As I stood there, frozen, my mind raced through every conversation, every look, every lie she had ever told me. The room felt colder, the shadows lengthening, stretching tendrils of darkness across the walls. I clenched my jaw, trembling but resolute. I couldn't ignore what I had found. I had to confront her, yet I also feared what I might unleash by doing so. Suddenly, a wave of cold resolve washed over me, and with it, the realization that I was now entangled in a web far darker than I'd ever imagined. I had uncovered a secret, one that could ruin everything, yet I knew that revealing it might also seal my fate. My hands trembled as I clutched the bottle, feeling the weight of my discovery settle heavily in my palm. The flickering shadows in the room seemed to whisper warnings, cloaking my thoughts in doubt. Was she truly capable of this? Could she be planning to eliminate me as well? The questions spun faster than I could answer them, and I knew with sickening certainty that nothing would be the same again. I was caught in a nightmare, with a murderer in my bed and death lurking just beneath the surface of her innocent facade. I looked back at her peaceful face, resigned but desperate for answers. My mind was a whirlwind of suspicion, love, and fear. I had to decide, expose her, run, or confront her in the dark glare of that cold, silent room. But deep down, I knew that whatever I chose, the darkness had already begun to consume us, and I was powerless to stop it. I could only wait, trembling, for what would come next, knowing that this discovery had only marked the beginning of a descent into chaos I might never escape. I stared into her eyes, trembling with a mixture of fury, disbelief, and an overwhelming wave of dread I couldn't quite suppress. My voice trembled as I hurled the accusation at her. "You poisoned Daniel." I spat out, my words heavy with accusation and a desperate need for the truth. Her face remained disturbingly serene, almost eerily calm, as if I'd just announced a mundane detail rather than a heinous crime. A faint smile curled at the corners of her mouth, one that twisted my stomach into knots, and I felt the cold hand of terror clutch at my insides. Her gaze bore into mine, unblinking, unwavering. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I expected a denial, a panic, a tear perhaps, anything but that calm, calculated look. Instead, her lips parted slowly, like she was savoring a secret she was finally about to reveal. "You think that was the end?" she whispered, her voice almost a caress, yet beneath it lurked something far darker. That was only the beginning. Her smile widened, malicious and predatory. I could feel her words slicing through the air, slicing through the fragile fabric of my certainty. She leaned closer, her eyes gleaming with a sinister light, and I could see how her mind was already weaving her next move. The room seemed to shrink as her words hung there, suspended in the thick darkness that now felt like it was closing in around us. I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot, unable to tear my gaze away from her chilling expression. Cold sweat slicked my palms, and I knew that whatever was coming next would change everything. I could sense it in every fiber of my being. She finally broke the silence, her voice dropping to a whisper, cruel and deliberate. "Daniel's poisoning was just the spark, the first step in my vengeance. You thought I was just angry about the past, didn't you? That I was merely hurt or betrayed? No, I've been planning this for a long time. I promised myself that I'd make you suffer, that your world would crumble piece by piece until you're begging for mercy." I felt my stomach turn, the blood draining from my face as her words sank in. Vengeance, revenge, a promise to destroy me from within. The weight of her declaration crushed my chest, suffocating me. I wanted to shout, to deny, to run, anything to escape the truth she was revealing, but my limbs refused to obey. My mind spun frantically, trying to grasp the horror unfolding before me. Her smile deepened, twisted and triumphant, as if she had already begun her conquest. You see, she continued softly, the poisoning of Daniel was just the opening act. There are others in the shadows waiting. I've been planning this for years, patiently, like a spider weaving her web. And now, I finally have you exactly where I want. Helpless. Her eyes glinted with a darkness that chilled me to the bone. A cold numbness settled over me, and I realized I was drowning in a sea of fear so profound I could hardly breathe. Her words haunted the corners of my mind, echoing each moment I'd ever trusted her, each promise I'd believed was genuine. Now I questioned everything, her innocence, our love, my own sanity. Was this some elaborate game, or was she truly capable of this monstrous act of betrayal? I wanted to scream, to deny her, to demand she prove her innocence, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stood there, trembling, eyes fixed on her sinister smile, feeling the cold reality that I was caught in a trap, one woven with her dark intentions and my own naive hope. As the silence stretched again, I saw her eyes flicker with something worse than malice. Anticipation, satisfaction, as if she relished the chaos she had sown. Her vow of revenge was a poison more deadly than any physical toxin. It seeped into my mind, infiltrating every thought, every doubt, every ounce of my resolve. I realized then that I was no longer just fighting for the truth, but for my very survival in this web of darkness she had spun around us. And the worst part was knowing that her promise of vengeance was only the beginning. Whatever came next, I understood I was already ensnared in her deadly game, one I might not survive. That night, sleep refused to come. The hours dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity of restless torment. I lay on my back, eyes fixated on the ceiling, yet my mind refused the silence. Images flickered like ghostly shadows dancing across the wall behind my eyelids. At first, I told myself it was just the light playing tricks, but as the darkness deepened, I began to notice things that shouldn't be there. Shadows moving, not just shifting in a corner, but creeping, crawling, slithering along the edges of the room. I blinked rapidly, trying to dispel what I feared was an hallucination, but the shapes persisted, elongating, twisting into forms that seemed almost deliberate. Were they hers? Could she really be manipulating my perceptions, twisting reality itself into a labyrinth of doubt? I sat bolt upright, sweat pooling in my temples as my eyes darted across the room. The faint flicker of movement caught my attention again. A shadow darted behind the curtain, then vanished. I reached out hesitantly, my hand trembling as I parted the fabric. Nothing. Just darkness and the empty space beyond. But the feeling lingered, an unshakable conviction that something was wrong. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared into the blackness. I told myself I was tired, that exhaustion played tricks on my mind, but deep down I knew better. I had seen her, that night, the way she looked at me with that icy smile, promising vengeance. Did she know? Was she already infiltrating my senses, bending my perception, making me doubt what was real? The shadows seemed to stretch and ripple, almost as if they were alive, playing a sinister game of hide and seek with my consciousness. I wondered if they were her silent messengers, her puppets dancing on the strings of her revenge. Was this all in my head, or had she truly begun her quiet assault on my sanity? My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but every rational thought was drowned by the creeping dread that I was being watched, by her darkness, by her unrelenting desire to see me broken. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to breathe. I told myself to stay calm, to focus, to remember that this was just a nightmare spun by my fears. But the shadows continued their silent ballet, swirling around the room like a malignant fog. I felt a cold sweat on my brow as the tiny hairs on my arms stood on end. Could she really be orchestrating this from the shadows? Or was I losing my grip, sinking into a paranoia that grew stronger with each passing moment. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, to ask her why she was tormenting me with this unseen terror. But my voice was caught in my throat, swallowed by the suffocating weight of suspicion. The room grew colder, the darkness thickening until I could barely distinguish the furniture from the sinister shapes lurking within. I reached out, trembling, and flicked on the bedside lamp, its warm glow cutting through the gloom. But as I looked back at the wall, the shadows remained, more vivid, more insidious. They seemed to slither, to crawl, to whisper promises of chaos and betrayal. I was trapped in a web spun by her silent vengeance, each shadow a strand pulling me deeper into doubt. Had she succeeded in contaminating my very perception? Was I merely a puppet in her game, dancing to her sinister tune? Lying back down, I stared at the ceiling, the glow from the lamp casting flickering patterns across the room. I knew I could not trust my senses anymore. Not tonight. Not ever again. Her vengeance was no longer just a threat. It was a living, breathing force, and I was its prey. In that endless night, as the shadows danced and the silence screamed in my ears, I realized that I was no longer sure what was real and what was illusion. Only her promise of revenge haunted me now, a dark specter lurking in every flicker of shadow, in every whisper of darkness. I clenched my fists tighter, knowing that tomorrow I would have to confront the truth if I could ever find it beneath these creeping shadows of her silent vengeance. As I rummaged through her belongings, a strange sensation prickled at the back of my neck, an instinctual warning I couldn't quite suppress. My fingers trembled as I pulled open a drawer, hoping to find some shred of clarity, some reason for the chaos she had unleashed in my mind. Instead, buried beneath a jumble of old letters and faded photographs, I found something else, an envelope, unmarked yet unmistakably hers. My heart hammered against my ribs as I carefully peeled it open. The paper felt coarse, almost gritty beneath my fingertips. I unfolded the crumpled sheet, eyes darting across the hurried handwriting. The words spilled out, raw and furious, and chill me to the core. Asterisk, when I am free, I will return from my prison cell to wipe you from this world. You think you can imprison my body and silence my revenge? You are mistaken. I will rise from my darkness, and I will drown you in it. Asterisk, I read the words twice, the reality of her vow sinking deeper with each repetition. Her promise, her dark promise, echoed inside my mind like a siren's cry, pulling me into a whirlpool of paranoia. What did she mean, return from her prison? Was she already planning her revenge, even now behind the bars? Or was this just another twisted taunt, a fragment of her mind spiraling into obsession? The room's shadows seemed to twist and curl around me as I clutched the letter tighter, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on my chest. My skin prickled with the sensation that I was no longer merely observing her actions. I was living within her threat, caught in a web spun from her own unyielding vengeance. Every creak of the old house, every flicker of the dying light, sounded like a sign that she was closer than I dared admit. A cold sweat broke across my forehead as I thought about her sworn oath. Her vow of retribution was not just a threat. It was a declaration of war. It gnawed at my sanity, fueling a paranoia I desperately tried to suppress. Was she truly capable of such darkness? Or was this message just a fragment of her fractured mind, a reflection of her fury that spiraled beyond control? Her words haunted me even when I closed my eyes, the flickering shadows on the ceiling transforming into her face, her expression unreadable but undeniably dangerous. I kept asking myself, was she truly vengeful enough to come back from her incarceration and destroy me? Or was I just projecting my fears onto her, trying to find some villain in her silence? In the quiet aftermath of discovery, I felt a cold certainty settle inside me. She was not done. Her spirit, her wrath, was bound to her incarceration only as much as a shadow is bound to the night. And I was the prey, caught in the dark web of her relentless enmity. The next morning, I knew I had to confront her, or at least find out the truth. But as I stared at the letter, my mind spiraled into even deeper paranoia. What if she had already found a way to strike from within her prison? What if her vengeance was already set in motion, waiting for the right moment to strike? Every sound outside my door, every whisper of wind, seemed to carry her voice, promising destruction. I could not shake the feeling that her vow was not just words, but a curse cast upon me, a spell that would bind me to her dark promise forever. Her threat to return and destroy me echoed in my ears as I sat rigid, heart pounding loudly enough to drown out everything else. I wondered if I was merely fooling myself, convincing myself that I still had control, when in truth, I was already ensnared in her sinister plan. That message had become my obsession, the one thing I couldn't dismiss. It whispered that the nightmare was only beginning, that her vengeance would eventually find its way to me, no matter how tightly I tried to lock it away. I knew then that I was no longer fighting her. I was fighting the terror she had planted inside my mind, a terror that grew stronger with each passing hour. And so I waited, trembling, clutching that cursed letter as if it could somehow contain her fury. I wondered how much longer before her promise became her reality, before the prison walls could no longer hold her, and her vengeance spilled into my world like a dark flood. The shadows lengthened, and I felt the weight of her words pressing down, suffocating me, as I wondered if I would survive her return. I stared into her eyes, my hands trembling slightly as I confronted her in the stark, cold visitation room. The fluorescent lights cast a sickly pallor over her face, but her eyes, those piercing, unyielding eyes, held a darkness that chilled me more than the chill in the air. I could feel my pulse racing, each beat loud enough to drown out the muffled echoes of footsteps outside, as I accused her of poisoning her brother. The words tasted bitter as I spat them out, conviction laced with a gnawing doubt that perhaps I had misjudged, that my accusations might be a bitter lie. I told myself to justify the fear gnawing at my insides. She sat unmoved, her expression like a carved statue, neutral, composed, almost serene. And then she smiled. Not a warm, reassuring smile, but a cruel, calculated curl of her lips that made my stomach turn. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if amused by my torment, by the chaos I had unleashed with my words. Her silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating, until she finally broke it with that slow, deliberate voice. "You think I poisoned him?" she whispered, her tone dripping with disdain. "You, who betrayed me so easily. Do you really believe I would stoop so low as to do something so vile?" Her voice was calm, almost hypnotic, but underneath I could hear the venom. She leaned forward, her elbows resting on the table, eyes never leaving mine. "You're so sure of your righteousness, aren't you? But you don't see the truth, do you? The truth is, I will make you pay, even from this prison. Even if I have to crawl out of my cell and dig you 6 feet deep myself." A shiver ran down my spine as her words sank into me. I had thought myself prepared, had tried to steel my nerves, yet her glare seemed to strip away every layer of certainty I clung to. Her lips curled into a cruel smile, and I saw the vengeful promise flickering behind her eyes, a promise that refused to be silenced, that refused to be broken by the cold prison walls surrounding her. "I swear," she continued, voice low and venomous, "your betrayal will be paid. I will make sure of it. Even from behind these bars, I will hunt you down. And when the time is right, I will bury you alive. Not in the ground, no," she added with a sinister wink, "but buried in the darkness of your own doubt, your own fears. You'll regret ever crossing me. You'll beg for mercy, but mercy will be the last thing you find." Her words hit me like a blow, each syllable a dagger twisting in my gut. I stared at her, feeling the weight of her hatred pressing down on me, suffocating my every thought. My mind raced, trying to grasp her meaning, her promise of vengeance, her vow of retribution. Even behind bars, she radiated a cold, deadly energy, as if her rage had transcended the physical boundaries of her cell. It was then I realized her threat wasn't just words. It was a curse, a dark spell cast to haunt me forever. I could see the wicked gleam in her eyes, and I knew she meant every word, that she had already begun her silent, deadly game, that no matter how much I tried to shield myself, her vengeance was lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The image of her smiling cruelly at me, promising to entomb me alive, haunted me long after I left that prison. Her vow had become an indelible scar etched into my mind, a dark prophecy I could not escape. I felt her fury ripple through my soul, a relentless tide washing over every ounce of hope I had clung to. As I walked away from her, I felt the heavy weight of her hatred settle deep within me. Her promise was a venomous seed planted in my consciousness, and I wondered if I had already begun to drown in its toxic embrace. I knew her vengeance wasn't just a threat. It was a living, breathing force, ready to erupt at any moment. And I couldn't shake the terrible certainty that her cruel smile, her icy words, signaled the beginning of a new nightmare, one that would threaten to engulf me completely, no matter how tightly I tried to hold on to my sanity. Her eyes still haunted me, even as the prison walls closed behind her. I realized then that I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and her promise to bury me alive wasn't just idle talk. It was a dark promise, a prophecy of my destruction, unless I found a way to outmaneuver her, to stay one step ahead of the vengeance that threatened to consume me. But deep down, I knew that no matter how clever I was, her fury was a beast that could never truly be tamed. And I was already trapped in her vengeful labyrinth, waiting for the inevitable moment when she would come to finish what she had started. I couldn't breathe, my voice trembling as I pushed her against the wall, my finger trembling with the weight of accusations I could no longer contain. "Did you do it? Did you manipulate Daniel into poisoning himself?" The words spilled out in a rush, desperate to pierce the icy veneer that she maintained so effortlessly. Her eyes, cold and unflinching, shone with a dangerous light, illuminating a fury I hadn't fully understood until that moment. She stared at me, her expression a haunting mask of calm, as if I hadn't just shattered the fragile equilibrium of our world. A slow, deliberate smile crept across her lips, an unsettling, predatory curve that sent a shiver down my spine. "You think I'm capable of that?" she whispered, her voice silky yet laced with menace. "You have no idea what I'm truly capable of." Her words echoed in my ears, but I refused to back down. I pressed harder, my fingers digging into her shoulders. "Why then? Why would you do this? What could you possibly gain from his death?" Each word struggled to escape, a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a terrible thirst for the truth. In that moment, she took a step back, her eyes flickering with a dangerous brilliance. The room grew colder, shadows pooling in the corners like silent witnesses to our confrontation. Her gaze lingered on me, unblinking, as if weighing the very depths of my soul. Then, with a slow, measured breath, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, yet still carrying that deadly weight. "I manipulated Daniel because he was standing in my way," she said, her tone devoid of remorse. "He knew too much, saw too much. I needed him out of the picture, and I used what I knew about him, his weaknesses, his fears, to make him vulnerable." Her eyes shimmered with a fury that made me question everything I believed about her. The woman I had loved, trusted, now revealed as a master puppeteer of chaos. A cold wind seemed to sweep through the room, stirring the curtains and whispering secrets I was too stunned to hear. I felt my mind splinter, trying to process the enormity of her confession. She had orchestrated her brother's death, not just through inaction or neglect, but through calculated manipulation, an act of cold, ruthless vengeance that chilled me to my core. "You knew," I managed to rasp, my voice cracking under the weight of betrayal. "You knew what would happen, and you did it anyway?" A flicker of satisfaction crossed her face, a flicker that I knew too well. It was the look of a predator savoring its prey, of a woman who had long since abandoned any semblance of remorse. Her eyes burned with a fury that made me question everything I thought I knew about her. That haunted, fragile love I had clung to was evaporating before my eyes, replaced by an abyss of darkness I couldn't comprehend. She stepped closer again, her voice dropping to a whisper laced with venom. "You should have seen the signs," she said softly, almost mockingly. "All those little moments, how he hesitated, how he looked at me differently. I knew what I was doing. I played him just as I will play you." Her words felt like a dagger twisting in my chest, a brutal reminder that her vengeance was not yet sated. It was a serpent coiled tightly around my heart, prepared to strike again. The room seemed to close in on me, the shadows creeping closer as her confession sank in. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had become something unrecognizable, a cold, calculating force of destruction. Her words, her eyes, her silence, they all screamed of a darkness I had never dared to imagine. And I realized, with terrifying clarity, that I was already entangled in her web of manipulation, a pawn in her deadly game. I stood there, trembling, my mind racing to find some way to undo what had been done, to prevent her from unleashing her vengeance fully. But deep in my gut, I knew this was only the beginning. Her fury had ignited a fire that could burn everything down, my love, my sanity, my very existence. The shadows lengthened, and I felt the weight of her promise, her vow to destroy me, pressing down on my shoulders. I had to run, had to escape this nightmare she had crafted, but I also knew it was too late. The damage was done. The serpent was unleashed, and I was just waiting for her final strike. As her hands trembled, I saw the moment crystallize in slow motion, the way her fingers curled around the handle of the small, ominous-looking pan. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears, each beat echoing the pounding dread that had been building inside me for what felt like an eternity. Her eyes locked onto the container, a hollow, distant stare that sent shivers down my spine. The room's dim light flickered, casting shadows that danced ominously across her face, accentuating the cold resolve etched into her features. I took a hesitant step forward, voice trembling as I demanded an explanation, but she only whispered back, "You don't understand, do you? This is the only way. He betrayed us, betrayed me, and I won't let him get away with it." Her lips curled into a faint, bitter smile that didn't reach her eyes. The faint clink of her trembling hands against the metal was deafening in the silence that followed. Her murmured promises of revenge, woven with the same quiet menace, pierced my soul, each word a dagger digging deeper into my rapidly unraveling sense of reality. I saw her fingers tighten around the pan, her knuckles blanching as she whispered to herself, "This is justice. It's the only way to truly be free." Her voice was almost hypnotic, a sick lullaby that masked the chaos roiling inside her. My mind darted frantically, trying to comprehend the tableau before me. Her trembling hands, the eerie calm on her face, the poisonous substance shimmering darkly inside the pan. I knew then, with chilling certainty, that this was no impulsive act. It was meticulously planned, a final act of vengeance that she believed would shatter the world we had built. A shiver ran down my spine as I saw her lift the pan slightly, her hands trembling so violently that I wondered if she would drop it altogether. Her murmurs grew louder, her words laced with venomous satisfaction. "Soon, it will all be over. His suffering, my pain, everything will change." Her voice cracked, betrayed by the tremor that betrayed her inner turmoil. I wanted to reach out, to snatch the pan from her grasp, to stop her from crossing a line I knew I could never come back from. But I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a mixture of fear, fury, and helplessness. My eyes darted to the small vial she had discreetly slipped into her pocket moments before, a silent but deadly accomplice to her madness. She had promised me a reckoning, and I saw now that her definition of justice was a poison that would forever alter the fabric of our existence. Her whispered vows of retribution echoed in my ears, an unrelenting promise that she would make me suffer as she had suffered, that her vengeance would leave no room for mercy or remorse. As she finally lifted the pan, her hand steady now, a sinister calm washing over her face, I felt my stomach churn. Every instinct screamed at me to act, to stop her, but my body refused to obey. The air thickened with the metallic scent of her trembling grip and the faint, acrid smell of the poison. Her lips parted in a cold, triumphant smile that chilled me to the bone. In that moment, I realized her vow of revenge was not just a threat. It was her declaration of war. She whispered softly, "Your life will never be the same," as she poured the deadly elixir into a glass, her eyes gleaming with a madness I couldn't comprehend. It was as if she was sealing her own fate and mine in one poisoned act. I watched helplessly, every fiber of my being screaming for me to stop her, to reclaim what was slipping away. But all I could do was stand there, trembling, as she whispered her dark promises and prepared to unleash her vengeance that would shatter everything I held dear. As I sat across from the cold, unyielding officers, the weight of my accusations pressed down on my chest like a stone. My voice trembled, not from fear alone, but from the overwhelming tide of helplessness that flooded every part of me. I knew what I had seen, felt the poison's faint sting on my fingertips, and saw the way her eyes flickered. Those same eyes now staring back at me from the other side of the cell, calm and unrepentant. Her face was a mask of serenity, almost amused, as if all of this, my accusations, the police, the mounting chaos, were just a game to her. She sat there, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze fixed on me, and I could feel her inner resolve, like iron in her bones. I had no doubt that she was planning her next move, her silent vow to make me suffer echoing in the depths of my mind. She leaned forward slightly, her voice low but laced with venom. "You think you can accuse me and get away with it?" she whispered, eyes narrowing into cold slits. "You have no idea what I am capable of, do you? I will make sure you pay, and I promise, this isn't over. The vengeance I seek will be the last thing you ever see." Her words slithered through the air like a serpent, sharp and deadly, and I felt my stomach tighten. Her promise of retribution wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. I stared into her eyes, searching for some flicker of remorse, some sign that she was regretting her dark resolve. Instead, her face remained eerily composed, a chilling smile curling at her lips as if she took pleasure in her own cruelty. Inside, I was unraveling, my mind spinning with the horrors I'd already witnessed. I thought about the night she whispered her vows of vengeance, how her voice had been softer then, but no less dangerous. She had sworn to make me suffer as I had inflicted pain in the past, to see me broken and humiliated just as she felt betrayed. The memory of her promise haunted me now, each word a dagger, piercing my resolve, fragmenting the fragile illusion that we could somehow escape this nightmare. I clenched my fists, feeling the roughness of my skin against the cold metal of the table. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to force her to see the terror she was unleashing. But all I could do was sit there, trembling, as her eyes gleamed with a sinister light. Her vow of vengeance was a dark promise, a relentless storm that threatened to swallow us whole. I thought about the poison she had slipped into her brother's glass, how she had sworn to me that her revenge would be swift and final, that she would bury me in the depths of despair, that my pleas would fall on deaf ears, drowned out by her ruthless determination. Her calm exterior masked a tempest of fury, and I knew I was only a pawn in her wicked game. The room felt like a cage, the silence broken only by her quiet, deadly words. I wondered if she truly believed her threats, if she thought her vengeance would bring her peace. But I knew better. Revenge was a poison that would corrupt her soul, just as it had already begun to consume mine. As I looked into her eyes, I could feel the chilling promise behind her gaze, an unrelenting vow that her wrath would be fulfilled no matter the cost. I realized that her fury was an unstoppable force, and I was helpless to stop its relentless march. The future stretched before me, bleak and unyielding, as I awaited the storm she promised would come, knowing deep down that her vengeance would leave nothing untouched, not even me. The tension in the car was suffocating. Every turn of the wheel seemed to tighten the knot in my stomach, my palms sweating against the cold plastic of the door handle. I could feel her eyes on me, even though she kept her face turned toward the road, her hands steady on the steering wheel. But I knew her mind was a storm, 1,000 thoughts swirling behind that calm exterior. My mind raced, desperate to grasp at some escape, some way to undo the damage I'd just accused her of, poisoning her own brother. I saw her jaw tighten for a moment, then relax, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That smile chilled me more than any scream could. It was the kind of smile that promised retribution, a cold, calculated menace hidden beneath her composed facade. I hesitated before speaking again, but the words burst out, trembling and raw. "You did it, didn't you? You poisoned him. I saw the signs, the way he was acting, so fragile, so broken. And you just watched him suffer." My voice cracked, haunted by the images I couldn't unsee. Her calmly slipping the poison into his glass, her eyes flickering with a dark satisfaction. Her gaze flicked briefly to me, a flicker of amusement or perhaps disdain, then returned to the road. "You don't understand everything," she murmured, her voice smooth and unwavering, like a blade slicing through the thick silence. "You think you know her, but you never really did. She's just like us, flawed, driven by what she wants." Her words dripped with dangerous ambiguity, as if she reveled in the chaos she'd sown. I pressed on, voice rising with a mixture of fury and fear. "Why? Why did you do it? What's your endgame? How could you tear apart your own family?" My words echoed in the confined space, each syllable a cry for truth, a plea for some shred of innocence left in her. Her eyes flickered with something dark, something unrecognizable. "Vengeance," she said softly, almost whispering, as if the word itself was a curse. "You think I wanted this? No, but he crossed the line, and I promised myself I'd make him pay. I swore I'd see him fall, and I will. Nothing will stop me now." Her voice was steady, unwavering, as if she was already relishing the moment when her plan would come to fruition. I could feel the icy grip of dread creeping into my chest. Her words confirmed what I had suspected. Her mind was set on destruction, on revenge that knew no bounds. And yet, I couldn't believe she'd actually go through with it. Not until I saw the cold glint in her eyes, the way her grip on the wheel tightened, almost as if she was preparing to pounce. The silence stretched between us, oppressive and heavy. My head spun with images of her sinister smile, the poison, her unwavering resolve to see her vengeance fulfilled at any cost. The car's interior felt like a tomb, closing in around us as I realized the terrifying truth. She was capable of anything. Her resolve was a knife, sharp and unforgiving, and I was trapped in her path. No matter how much I begged, how much I pleaded for her to stop, nothing would change her course. The road ahead was dark, endless, and lined with the shadows of her wrath. I knew, with sickening certainty, that her vengeance would not only consume her brother, but threaten to tear apart everything I held dear, my sanity, my hope, and perhaps even my life. A shiver ran down my spine as I pictured what she might do next, the terrible plans swirling in her mind like a storm ready to break. I clenched my fists, feeling the roughness of my knuckles against my skin, trying to ground myself against the mounting dread. She was driving like a woman with nothing to lose, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her thoughts a dark abyss I could neither control nor escape from. I whispered under my breath, a prayer or maybe a plea, not knowing which. "Please don't do it. Please not this way." But I knew my words were useless. Her vow of vengeance was a force of nature, relentless and unstoppable. I was merely a passenger on her destructive path, helpless to steer us away from the impending catastrophe. As the miles slipped by, I felt the weight of her promise pressing down on me, the unspoken threat hanging like a blade above my head. Her silence was deafening, her focus unbreakable, and deep inside, I feared that soon her vengeance would be unleashed, without mercy, without remorse, and I would be caught in the crossfire. In the suffocating darkness of the basement, I could barely breathe, the air thick with the scent of damp concrete, and something else, something metallic, sickeningly familiar. My eyes darted around, adjusting to the dim glow of a flickering bulb dangling overhead, casting erratic shadows that danced across the crates and old furniture piled against the walls. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears, and a cold sweat prickled along my skin as I fought the rising wave of dread. Then I saw it, an old, battered wooden box, roughly the size of a shoebox, sitting atop a dusty crate. I hesitated only a moment before I yanked it open, my fingers trembling as I peeled back the rusted latch. Inside, among faded photographs and crumpled papers, lay objects that seemed out of place in this forgotten corner of the basement. A small vial filled with a clear liquid, a tarnished silver locket, and a crumpled piece of paper stained with dark smudges. I picked up the vial first. Its glass was scratched and clouded, but I recognized it instantly. The same type of poison I had read about in hushed whispers, the deadly substance her brother had unwittingly ingested. My stomach twisted violently, and I clutched it tightly, feeling the coldness seep into my palms. My mind reeled, trying to piece together how she could have been involved in something so heinous, so evil. Next, my gaze fell on a locket. I hesitated before opening it, fearing what I might find. Inside, a tiny photograph of Daniel, smiling, innocent, was pressed against a small piece of fabric. I knew this was her way of reminding herself of her brother, of her supposed love, even as she plotted his demise. The contradiction made my stomach churn further. How could she have played the innocent sister while orchestrating such darkness? Then I saw the crumpled paper, smudged with fingerprints and streaks of ink. I unfolded it carefully, feeling the rough edges scrape against my fingers. The words scrawled hurriedly, fiercely, her own handwriting, an explicit confession of her plans. She had poisoned him, not just out of anger or grief, but with cold, calculated intent. The words, "Vengeance will be mine," stared back at me in jagged letters, and the final line chilled me to the bone. He will pay for what he did, and I will see to it personally. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Every doubt I had harbored, every suspicion I dismissed as paranoia, crumbled beneath this revelation. She had lied to everyone, played the victim, masked her true nature with a serene facade. I could see now how deeply she had embedded herself in her deception, how she manipulated those around her. Her brother's death, a carefully crafted piece in her twisted game. My knees buckled as I backed away from the box, my mind reeling with 1,000 questions. How long had she been planning this? How many others had she fooled? Did anyone suspect her? Did Daniel ever suspect her? The weight of the truth pressed down on me, suffocating, unforgiving. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the cold objects, feeling betrayed at a level I never thought possible. In that moment, I understood that my world had shattered beyond repair. She was a master of deception, a predator cloaked in the guise of a loving sister. The woman I thought I knew was nothing but a mask, an illusion carefully maintained to hide her true nature. My mind raced with images of her smiling, comforting, her voice soft and sweet. While behind that facade, she was a killer. I knew I couldn't stay in that basement. The evidence was too damning, the truth too overwhelming. I had to get out, to expose her, to tell someone what I had found. But fear clenched my throat. What if she found out I discovered her secrets? Would she come for me next? Would I become her next victim? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a reminder that I was now entangled in something far darker than I had ever anticipated. As I turned to leave, clutching the evidence close to my chest, I swore to myself that I wouldn't let her get away with this. No matter what it took, I would reveal her true face, the cold, calculating killer behind the mask of innocence. My stomach twisted anew with the knowledge that my actions might set off a chain of events from which there was no return. But silence wasn't an option anymore. The truth had to be known, even if it meant risking everything, including my life. I confronted her in the kitchen, my heart pounding so violently I thought it might break through my chest. The air was thick with tension, every breath feeling like I was inhaling shards of glass. Her eyes met mine, icy and unyielding, as I pointed my trembling finger at her and accused her of poisoning her brother. The words spilled out before I could second-guess myself, trembling with a mixture of rage, betrayal, and dread. Her face remained eerily calm, almost as if she had been expecting this moment all along. A slow, cold smile crept on her lips. No warmth, no remorse. Only a chilling reminder of the woman I believed I loved. Her eyes shimmered with a strange light, as if she was savoring the anticipation of her next move. "You think you know everything," she whispered, her voice smooth yet laced with venom. "You have no idea what's coming next." Her words cut deeper than any blade, sinking into my gut, stirring a primal fear I couldn't suppress. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand answers, but all I could do was stare, rooted in place, watching her unravel her own twisted plans. She took a step closer, her movements deliberate, almost theatrical. "You think you're so clever, don't you? But you're just a pawn in this game. I've been planning this for a long time." Her gaze flicked to the knife on the counter, gleaming under the dim, fluorescent light. My stomach clenched. In that moment, she revealed her true intent, her desire to destroy me, to erase everything I thought I knew about her. She whispered that her vengeance would be the last thing she'd do before vanishing into the shadows, leaving me with the wreckage of my life. Her words echoed in my mind, a promise of chaos and retribution, a vow that I would regret ever crossing her. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as she leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "You thought you could expose me, but I'll make sure you pay. You'll wish you never doubted me." Her eyes burned with fury, a fury that felt like a storm ready to swallow me whole. Time slowed as I struggled to find my voice, my mind racing for a plan to escape this nightmare. I knew that in her eyes, I was already condemned, an obstacle standing in her way of final vengeance. The kitchen suddenly felt claustrophobic, the walls closing in as her words hammered into my consciousness, each one a dagger. I clutched the evidence I'd hidden in my pocket, what little I had managed to gather, and realized that my fight wasn't just for survival, but for the truth. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not again. Not after everything we had been through. My voice barely escaped my throat, trembling but firm. "You're a monster. I won't let you destroy me, or anyone else." Her eyes flashed with a dark, triumphant gleam. "This is only the beginning," she hissed softly. "When I'm done, there won't be anything left of you. Nothing but memories of someone who thought they knew me." I felt a shiver run down my spine as her words sank in, a terrifying reminder of how close I was to becoming another victim of her wrath. The room seemed to swirl around me, the shadows stretching like claws, ready to drag me into a darkness from which I might never emerge. But I stood my ground, my fists clenched, knowing that I had to fight with everything I had. In that moment, I realized I was trapped in a war far beyond what I had anticipated, one that threatened to consume us both. Her vow of revenge was not just a threat, it was a promise. Yet, I refused to let her win, no matter how formidable she appeared. I had to find a way out, to expose the truth before she erased me entirely. The stakes had never been higher, and I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me. Either I fought, or I was doomed to be buried beneath her fury forever. I stared into her eyes, trembling with a mix of fury and disbelief, as I accused her of poisoning her brother. Her face remained eerily composed, a cold smile curling at the edges that sent chills down my spine. The courtroom felt suffocating, each second dragging on as the weight of my words hung in the air like a death sentence. I was certain the truth was on my side, yet her expression betrayed nothing. No remorse, no anger, only a calm that felt more terrifying than any rage. She took a slow step forward, her voice soft but edged with menace. "You think your accusations will break me?" she whispered, her gaze piercing through me as if she could see every doubt swirling inside my mind. You believe that pointing fingers at me will unravel what I've built? No, my dear, this is just the beginning. Her lips curled into a merciless smile, and I could sense the storm of vengeance brewing behind her eyes. The shadows in the courtroom flickered, cast by the dim overhead lights, but to me, they seemed to stretch and twist, mimicking the darkness that was slowly consuming my thoughts. I felt a cold sweat break out on my brow, the realization that her words weren't just idle threats, but a promise of something far worse. Every fiber of my being told me that she was not done. She was plotting her final act of revenge, and I was the unwitting protagonist in her twisted play. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my trembling hands, knowing that my every move was being watched, scrutinized. I had come here with the hope of exposing her lies, of sealing her fate with the truth, but now I wasn't sure if I'd merely handed her the perfect weapon for her vengeance. Her declaration echoed in my mind, a sinister lullaby that promised chaos and destruction. I could feel the grip of her words wrapping around my soul, tightening around my resolve. She lifted her chin and spoke again, her voice resonating with icy certainty. You think your accusations will save you? No, they will only feed my fury. The moment they lock you behind bars, that's when my final punishment begins. Do you understand? Your imprisonment, your pain, will be the prelude to my ultimate triumph. Her words reverberated inside me, like a cold dagger twisting deeper with each syllable. I clenched my jaw, fighting the rising tide of dread. I knew that her vow of revenge wasn't just a threat. It was a promise rooted in centuries of grudges, in the poisoned veins of her history. I had stumbled into her trap, and now I was caught in the web of her vengeance, dangling precariously over the abyss of her wrath. In that moment, I realized that this courtroom was only the latest battleground in a war that had been raging long before I ever accused her. Her calm exterior masked a storm of fury that I could never fully understand, a fury that had been simmering beneath her surface for years. Every word she uttered was a calculated strike, a reminder that I had ignited a fire she was prepared to burn everything down to quench. I looked into her eyes, searching for any flicker of remorse or hesitation, but found none. Only that cold, unyielding resolve that chilled me to my core. I knew I had to find a way to turn her own words against her, to expose her madness before she drowned us all in her venom. But as she finished her declaration, I saw the gleam of triumph in her eyes, and I understood. She was already one step ahead, plotting her final act of vengeance. And I was left standing there, trembling, not just from fear, but from a desperate hope that somehow, I could outwit her, reveal her true nature, and break free from the darkness she threatened to cast over my life forever. That night, the storm outside raged with a ferocity that seemed to echo the chaos inside my mind. Thunder cracked like a whip, shaking the walls of my trembling consciousness. As I lay in bed, my eyes fixated on the flickering shadows cast by the lightning, I was suddenly transported into a vision so vivid it felt more real than the dim room around me. I saw myself in a dark, oppressive prison. Cold, iron walls slithered upward, swallowing the faint light and trapping me in a suffocating darkness. The air was thick with the scent of rust and despair. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, silhouettes of faceless figures lurking just beyond reach, whispering threats I couldn't quite understand. The weight of their presence pressed down on my chest, constricting my breath, making each inhale a struggle. In that nightmare, the echo of her vow reverberated like a sinister lullaby. She had sworn she would bury me alive, and in that vision, I could feel her hands, cold and unyielding, gripping my shoulders as she dragged me into the depths of that shadowy abyss. My pulse pounded in my ears as I imagined her smirking in the darkness, her eyes gleaming with the vengeance she had promised. That promise, a curse etched in my mind, kept echoing, a relentless mantra that refused to fade. My mind spun with images, the iron bars closing in, the shadows creeping closer, and her voice taunting me from the darkness, whispering that I was already lost. I tried to scream, to cry out for help, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. Every fiber of my being told me I was destined to be entombed alive, a victim of her wrath, sealed within these invisible walls forever. The storm outside intensified, and I could feel the thunder vibrating through the walls of my consciousness. It was as if nature itself was mourning my predicament, echoing the turmoil that had become my existence. I clenched my fists, desperate to wake from this nightmare, but the nightmare persisted, relentless and unyielding. Suddenly, a flicker of hope pierced through the darkness, a memory of her face when she was vulnerable, when her fury was not yet unleashed. I clung to that fragment, trying to anchor myself in a reality where her vengeance was merely a shadow of the past, a threat that I could somehow defy. But the intangible chains of fear held me fast, and I knew that even in sleep, her vow haunted every corner of my mind. As the vision faded with the dawn's first light, I awoke trembling, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like a hammer against my ribs. The shadows still lingered in my thoughts, and I could not escape the chilling certainty that her promise was not just words. It was a curse etched into the very fabric of our twisted fate, a future where I might never leave the darkness she had sworn to cast me into. That night, her vow became an invisible shackle, holding me captive in a prison of my own fears. The walls of that imagined cell may have been made of shadows, but the dread was real enough to suffocate me anew. I wondered if I would ever find a way out, if I could somehow turn her shadowed vengeance into ashes, or if I was doomed to spend eternity inside that dark, iron prison, waiting for the day she decided to make her promise a deadly reality. As I stood there, trembling and betrayed, a strange, sickening thought took root. What if I had been played all along? What if the accusations, the rage I had flung at her, were nothing more than pawns in her calculated game? My mind raced back to every moment we shared, searching for signs I had missed, clues that might reveal her true intent. I remembered her calmness when I confronted her, how her eyes flickered just slightly, the way her smile held an undertone of something darker than I had ever seen before. Was that serenity genuine, or was it a mask? Did she manipulate every word, every glance, to steer me toward this devastating conclusion? Had I been blinded by my own suspicion, or by her cunning? A sudden shiver coursed through me as the realization struck. Perhaps she had orchestrated the entire scenario with meticulous care. The thought that she might have poisoned her brother without a single trace sent a cold ripple through my gut. Was her anger at him genuine, or merely a pawn she used to set her plan in motion? Was the evidence I believed in fabricated, a carefully crafted illusion designed to serve her vengeance? I closed my eyes, trying to piece together the moments leading up to the accusation. The subtle inconsistencies I dismissed earlier now loomed larger, glaring at me like warning signs I had deliberately ignored. The suspicious silence from her when I pressed her about the poisoning, the way her alibi fell apart under scrutiny. Was that coincidence? Or was it carefully manufactured to cover her tracks? My mind spiraled further into doubt as the threads unraveled, revealing a tapestry woven with lies. Could she have poisoned her brother and then, when discovered, manipulated the scene to implicate me? Maybe her calmness was not a sign of innocence, but an indication of her cold, calculating nature. The woman I thought I knew had become a stranger, a puppeteer behind a web of deception. The more I thought, the more I saw her in a new light, an actress in a play I had unwittingly become part of. Her vow of vengeance, once a source of terror, now seemed like the final act in a grand scheme. I couldn't ignore the possibility that I was merely a pawn, a scapegoat in her personal vendetta. Perhaps her accusations, her rage, were just the opening moves in her ultimate game of control. The realization hit me with brutal clarity. This was not just about the poisoning. It was about her power, her ability to manipulate my fears and doubts to serve her twisted ends. The woman who had sworn vengeance was no longer a person I could trust, but a master manipulator who had played me from the very beginning. I felt my stomach tighten as the weight of deception pressed down on me. Everything suddenly looked different, distorted by lies and half-truths. The evidence I clung to now seemed flimsy, fragile, like a house of cards ready to tumble. I wondered how many other truths she had hidden, how many secrets she kept buried beneath her cool exterior. Would I ever uncover the full extent of her treachery? Or was I doomed to live forever in this shadowy maze of suspicion, forever questioning every word, every gesture? The more I unraveled her web, the deeper I sank into despair, knowing that the woman I thought I knew might be nothing but a carefully crafted illusion designed to destroy me. As I looked into her eyes once more, I saw not innocence, but a chilling calmness, the composure of someone who knew they had already won. Her smile haunted me, a reminder that her vengeance was not just a threat. It was a weapon she had already wielded, and I had been the unwitting target. In that moment, I realized that my entire life had been a carefully constructed lie, and I was only beginning to see the cracks in her deception. I stand rigid, my fists clenched at my sides as the silence between us thickens, heavy with unspoken accusations and fraught with the tension of impending disaster. My voice trembles as I finally break the oppressive quiet, my words spilling out with raw intensity. You poisoned him. You did it. I know it's you. How could you do this? The words feel like shards of glass cutting into my throat, but I can't hold back anymore. I need her to own her darkness, to confess the lies that have strangled our life together. Her eyes, cold and unyielding, meet mine with a glacial calm that sends a shiver down my spine. Her face remains eerily serene, as if she's already prepared for this moment, as if the truth I seek is just another game for her to win. A small, calculated smile forms at the corner of her mouth, one that doesn't reach her eyes. It's the smile of someone who has already won the war, someone who has meticulously crafted her mask of innocence and is now ready to shatter my reality. You can accuse me all you want, she whispers, her voice smooth and venomous, laced with the promise of revenge. But I will make you regret every word. You think you see the truth? No, my dear, you see what I want you to see. I am untouchable now. Her words drip with malice, each syllable a dagger aimed at my heart. I feel the weight of her threat pressing down on me, suffocating, as if the very air around us is turned into a noose tightening around my neck. The room seems to warp and twist as her words echo in my mind. Shadows dance on the walls, flickering like specters of our fractured past, mocking the innocence I believed we shared. Every glance at her feels like a betrayal, every touch a lie. I know she's dangerous, more so now than ever, and I am acutely aware that she's willing to destroy everything to keep her secrets buried. I grit my teeth, fighting the surge of desperation rising within me. I need to see through her facade, to uncover what lies beneath her icy exterior. Yes, I am terrified of what she might do if I push too far, but I cannot let her get away with this. Not without the truth. You think you can silence me. I continue, voice hoarse but resolute. You think your charm, your lies, will keep you safe forever. But I won't be your pawn anymore. I will find out what really happened, and I swear I will expose you. My words hang in the air, trembling with the weight of my determination, each syllable a blow to her carefully constructed illusion. Her smile widens, a dark, triumphant expression that confirms my worst fears. She steps closer, her eyes gleaming with deadly intent. You're playing a dangerous game, she murmurs, voice low and threatening. I've already won. You just don't realize it yet. Her words are like a final blade, severing the fragile thread of trust one thought we shared. I stare into her eyes, desperately searching for a flicker of remorse or guilt, but find none. Only the cold amusement of someone who has already claimed victory. The rage inside me boils over, but I keep my voice steady, firm. This isn't over. I will uncover the truth, no matter what it takes. And when I do, you'll regret ever crossing me. She laughs softly, a sound devoid of warmth. and turns away, leaving me with nothing but the echo of her footsteps and the cruel certainty that our battle is far from finished. I know she is prepared to annihilate me, to bury me alive in her web of lies, but I also realize that I cannot let her win. Not yet. In that moment, I vow to myself that I will fight with every ounce of strength I have. I will peel back her layers of deception, expose her secrets, and bring the darkness she's hidden into the light. Because I refuse to be another victim of her vengeance. I refuse to be destroyed without a fight. And as I stand there, trembling but unbroken, I understand that the true battle has only just begun, and I am ready to face whatever horrors lie ahead.